Chapter 27. November 1997. With November came a flu bug that hit the town of Whitmire and the towns around it hard. The weather had gotten a lot colder and I was feeling it bite as I got off the school bus that certain day. Dad hadn't been feeling well, but he was still working because there were things on a ranch that demanded to be done every day. He usually came in about 5 p.m. to cook supper for us. As the news came on the TV at 5:30 p.m., I realized that he was late. I put my coat on and headed outside to find him. Yellow bounded ahead of me and ran towards the barn, so I followed. He was barking, which wasn't anything unusual. Once inside the barn, I looked for Yellow. My mouth opened in surprise and alarm when I saw my dad lying on the ground. Yellow was licking his face. I ran over to him, yelling his name. Right away I could tell he had a high fever. I wondered how long he'd been lying there. "Dad, can you get into the truck by yourself if I drive?" I asked him as I wiped away my tears. "Yeah," he mumbled. He was barely conscious, it seemed. I dug in his pocket until I found the keys, then I ran and got the truck. But then he didn't have the strength to stand. More tears rolled down my face as I attempted to drag him. I wasn't getting anywhere. I kept thinking he needed to be lighter. "Ask," I heard in my mind. "Can you make him lighter so I can drag him?" I asked out loud. I jerked suddenly and almost toppled over as he was suddenly a lot lighter. Thank you," I cried as I pulled him towards the truck. I asked the same thing to get him on his feet. He was more responsive then and managed to help get himself into the truck. Yellow jumped in when I opened the driver's door and I urged him to sit down. Then I drove 20 miles to the hospital. The staff pulled him out of the truck and put him on a gurney. One of them questioned me and I told them all that I knew. "You drove him here," the person stated as she looked me over. "You're not old enough to drive." "Yeah, I had to. There was no one else. It was just me and my dad." They had someone else park the truck for me as if I hadn't already driven 20 miles on my own to get there. Poor Yellow had to sit in the cold truck. I wished then that I'd left him home. They questioned me about everything regarding my dad's health, and I told them all that I knew, which was next to nothing. I called Bob in case he could do something. He told me that I should have called him first. I hadn't really thought about that. He and Nancy came to the hospital and talked to the doctors. It seemed that the medical staff really hadn't needed to ask me all those questions because he had the flu like so many other people. One person had died from it. After the staff had put my dad in a hospital room and said he'd be there for the night, Bob made me go home with them. Nancy drove our truck home, and later Yellow and I slept in their spare bedroom. My dad was released the next day and given antibiotics and told the rest. Bob and I fed our cattle, and then he had to go tend things at his own property. He told me to make sure my dad got his medicine and to cook things for him to eat. "No goofing off either. I don't want you giving him cookies or something worthless like that. Surely you can cook eggs or something, right?" he asked. "Yeah," I reluctantly agreed. Nancy would have come over to stay with us, but she was taking care of someone else that was sick. The flu had really knocked the wind out of my dad, and mostly he slept. I cooked scrambled eggs and toast, but he didn't want to eat them. All I could do was to get him to take a few bites. He was still weak, so I slept in his room and helped him to the bathroom when he needed to go. Bob came over with some dinner and to check on my dad. He told me that I was doing a good job. The next morning I woke up by myself. Usually I was in my room and my dad woke me up unless I was already awake. Dad stirred and I helped him to the bathroom. I made some more eggs and he ate a little bit. I pulled a cold, wet cloth on his forehead and listened to him mumble about having to take care of the ranch. It occurred to me that I had to do it. "It's taken care of, Dad. Don't worry about it," I assured him. "Take these pills and go back to sleep." I fed Yellow and washed the dishes. I stood outside with Yellow, who didn't seem to feel good. "I don't know what to do. I said out loud. It was a school day and I should have been getting on the bus. Yes, you do, the ranch answered back. I got on the tractor and took a hay bale out to the cattle while Yellow stayed with my dad. I fed the chickens too. Bob stopped by and told me that he'd called the ranch hands, but that they were all sick too. What needs to be done? I asked him. He helped me with the hardest task, and then he had to tend to his ranch. His ranch hand was sick too. I continued on my own, then I went back to the house and checked on my dad. I made sure he had juice and water and food. I did everything to make him comfortable and left Yellow to watch over him. I found that part of the fence needed fixing, so I set to repair it. I drove to the grocery store later that day and bought some things that we needed. Bob got one of the retired men he regularly chewed the fat with at the local coffee shop to come over and help out. That went on for 5 days. My dad was feeling a little better by then, but not too much. Bob and his family were now sick. So for another week, I did a repeat of everything at home with the help of Bob's retired friend. Then I went over to Bob's ranch and fed his animals and did what absolutely needed to be done. I checked on him and Nancy ever so often too, because the one child of theirs that was local could only take 2 days off work. Their son was going to check on them before he went to work and then after work. Bob griped at me making scrambled eggs the 3rd time and told me to fry some meat and cook some vegetables. I did that, but I was about the only one that ate anything because he didn't have much of an appetite and neither did Nancy. Why aren't you sick? He griped another time. Don't mind him, Pumpkin. We appreciate what you're doing for us. We hope you don't get sick, Nancy murmured to me. I wondered what they thought of me seeing them in their pajamas and in bed. At least they hadn't got as sick as my dad had. The school had since closed for a few days because the flu was an epidemic in our town. Someone dropped off homework for me to do. I did the homework late at night. Dad fretted constantly about the farm, but I kept assuring him that it was handled. How are you doing all this, Pumpkin? He asked as he finally was regaining some of his strength. I'm not. Bob's retired friend is mostly doing everything. I lied as I shrugged my shoulders and sat down on the bed, working out math problems. I didn't tell him that I was exhausted. I just dealt with it. In all but 2 days, I'd had someone who'd help with the hard stuff. Being that it was late fall, there was a lot less to do. Thank you, sweetheart. I don't know what I'd do without you, he said as he hugged me to him. A little while later, he said he wanted to try a shower. I think you better sit down and shower, I told him. I'll go find a chair. The only thing I found that would work was a small bench that we had in the kitchen, so I put it in the tub. I started the water and got it to be mildly hot, then shut it off. Then I helped him in the shower and put the washcloth soap and shampoo within reach of him. I closed the shower curtain and he tossed his pajamas out. I put my hand around the curtain to turn the water back on to the shower head. Oh my God, I've forgotten how good a shower can feel, he remarked. Do you need help? No, step outside and I'll yell when I'm ready to get out. So I did. He was watching TV that night, so I knew he was feeling better, but he was also talking about the ranch and how he hated that I had to take care of everything. I tuned him out. The next day, one of the ranch hands was able to help me with most of the chores on Bob's and our ranch. Bob's retired friend was now sick. It was still another 4 days before I decided that Daddy was well enough to do some of his regular ranch work. By then, our ranch hand was well enough to take care of the ranch, and I was able to go back to school. Bob and Nancy were feeling more like themselves by then, too. By listening to the news, nearly everyone had caught the flu. Bob had told me every day I visited that I'd be sick too, but I never was. Maybe she really is an alien, I heard him tell my dad a few days later. She'd been sick before, my dad assured him. Yeah, one time about a month or so after I'd begun living with him, I'd caught a cold. That had been nearly 5 years before. I hadn't so much as a sniffle since. Finally, there was a perk to being an alien. It was hell about time. You missed some time. I had expected to hear Concerto No. 2, third movement by now, Mr. Doug told me when I was back in school with my violin lessons. Despite the past week's turmoil, I had played the piece several times. It actually seemed easier than the first lesson that I'd had. And you shall hear it, I replied as I put my violin in position and flawlessly played the concerto. Mr. Doug, who had been standing up and staring quite intently, sat down as if all the air had escaped from the room. You shouldn't have been able to play that piece so soon, or the last one for that matter, he finally remarked. I understand it now. I think I understand everything, I replied as I flipped out some sheet music. I played Beethoven's Sonata Pathétique Movement 3 and decided to change some stuff on it. This is what I came up with. You did what? Mr. Doug asked in confusion. I knew that I'd blown him away with my skill at Concerto No. 2, and I was just bragging now. Instead of answering him, I began to play my remake of Pathétique Movement 3. As I ended the piece, it was a toss-up to whether Mr. Doug was just royally pissed at me or in awe. Dude, what was that? That was sacrilegious. And how can you play that well? You've only been taking lessons for a few months. I can play the guitar solo in Freebird. It's like the same thing, I countered on the defensive. I think you need to go back to your regular music class, he replied. I blinked in amazement, then gathered up my things and left. I put everything in my locker, then I walked out of the school and sat on the steps muttering all kinds of unkind words. He'd fired me.